right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to New York Comic Con, the Metaverse. Obviously, things are still a little bit online, and Dark Horse is thrilled to still be able to bring you guys some panels with some of your favorite creators. Today, I am joined by our all-star bunch for the Dark Horse Comics All-Stars panel. So I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves, and maybe you all can say your name and something that you're working on right now, one of your major projects that brings you here today. Let's go ahead and start with Roye.
Oh, wow. I thought we were going to go in order of seniority, but just kidding. My name is Roye Okupe. I am the writer for all the stories in the YouNeek universe, being published by Dark Horse currently. So we have Malika Warrior Queen, EXO, The Legend of Wally Williams, and Iyanu, Child of Wonder. All these stories are inspired by African culture, history, and mythology. And somebody that was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, for me, it's always been my dream to tell superhero and fantasy stories from the African perspective. So yeah, that's pretty much just about me. I'm just excited to be here with the true all-stars, if I may say. But yeah, that's about it for me.
Awesome. Scott, we'll jump to you next.
Sure. I'm Scott Snyder, and I'm currently working on a bunch of books for Best Jacket Press, which is our studio that are going to come over and print in Dark Horse towards the end of the year. We're really excited. We have Demons with Greg Capullo, Clear with Francis Manipal, and Night of the Ghoul with Francesco Francavilla are our first three. So those come out now in digital from Comixology Originals, and then are going to come out in print from Dark Horse in the spring.
Awesome. And how about you, Jody?
Hi, I'm Jody Houser. On the Dark Horse side, I work on a lot of the licensed books. So I've penned a number of Stranger Things miniseries, some Critical Role books, and other stuff coming up I can't talk about yet.
Yep. Hopefully we'll have some announcements from Jody coming soon. And then last but not least, Brian.
Yeah, hi, my name is Brian Bendis, and I have a company called Jinx World that is the home of all our creator-owned comics that we've done over the years, and we just brought all of them to Dark Horse, which includes a bunch of brand new stuff, including a book called Joy Operations with my friend Stephen Byrne, this beautiful sci-fi book that will be the launch of our partnership with the Dark Horse. Very
cool. Yes, we are so excited to have you guys all on the Dark Horse team right now. I feel like 2020, hit everyone like a train, but 2021 has been a really, really fun year, especially in the last, I would say, I guess most of this year has been the last 6 months, but even still, I feel like we've made a lot of really cool announcements so far, and working with you guys has been really, really exciting, and I'm thrilled to see where we go. But yeah, I just kind of want to talk to you guys about your sort of general workload and stuff like that. But also each of you guys does something so vastly different, and you bring something very different to comics. So Brian, Roye, and Scott, all three of you guys sort of are creating projects right now that bring a lot of new and interesting voices and new artists to the team. What are some of the joys of bringing so many new creators to the table?
Scott, you want to do it?
Brian, you go ahead. Also, you look really thin, dude. I have to get some tips from you on staying in shape.
No, I'm not exactly the same the last time you saw me. Exactly.
You look good.
All right, well, thank you. And I think there's so many pictures of me from when I was heavy still floating around that I remember. Anyway, so we can do a panel about that later. Yeah, you know what? I love the actual art of creating is actually in my head sometimes different than the craft of writing, the actual like building something from scratch, or what's behind it, and then teaming up with someone to bring your energies together. And now I'm going to sound like a Portland hippie here, but there's nothing else. Can't help it. But when you're teaming up with someone or someone's, and everyone's kind of bringing their energy together in a collaboration, if it's working, you build something that you couldn't have built on your own, or reach a height you couldn't get to on your own, And everyone feels that way. Like everyone involved goes, oh, I would never have done this if not for this. And I'm so happy like I got there. And so every collaboration, that's the goal is what can we do to bring the best out in each other, and almost every single time that has been achieved, you could see it in the work. Like it creates a successful comic. It connects to the audience. And so that's my favorite part is being able to just like share that experience with people. Sometimes you do it with like dear friends and family, and then other times you do it with like brand new people, right? It's like Stephen and I have only made a couple comics together. So this is like, I don't mean sound weird, but it does feel very similar to like, would you like to make a baby with me? It has the same kind of like stresses. It's like, yeah, we have to make this baby, and then we have to take care of it, and we have to raise it like together. And so it's basically what you're asking people to do. And I adore it more than anything, because much like raising a child, you don't know what's going to happen. And that's the exciting part. You can do everything right and blow it, and you can do everything wrong, and everything comes out great. And that
A guest is at the front door. Once again, a guest is at the
yeah. Also, I'm not in my house, so that's if I look freaked out by the sounds of this house. So anyway, so that's what I love the most about it.
Awesome.
You cut that last part out.
That's totally fine. Everyone knows we're at home. Things happen.
That was weird. It's
cool.
like I'm on the bridge of the Enterprise. I know.
Yeah,
I was really impressed.
Brian is actually in space right now.
Yeah. I'm on the Orville. Yeah, brought it back to Dark Horse license. Look what they did. Anyway.
Boy, what you're doing sounds so cool. Also, I'm excited that you're building. It sounds like a whole ecosystem, of story.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're doing similar, I feel, but like I think we all get to a place where we kind of realize, oh, this is the good part, like right here. Like this is like there's a lot of parts to this business, but this part right here is what we should be focused on. And Dark Horse is the place that does that. It just is. It always has been. Like I came up at a time when I was at Caliber Comics in the 90s, and we would just all be wishing we were at Dark Horse. And not to be, we were thrilled we were published, thrilled. But Dark Horse was like the gold standard, and you're like, oh my God, to be there making comics would be it. So to be here today is pretty amazing to me.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we're very glad to have you. And then Scott, you're doing something kind of similar with your new upcoming work with us. What's that process been like for you so far?
I mean, it's been great. And again, it's wonderful to be, here with creators like Jody and Roye. And it feels like Dark Horse is, this last couple of years in particular, has been aggressive about wanting to try new things with creators that have like big vision, so that was what attracted me to the publisher when I was talking to Mike Richardson and stuff, that it wasn't so much just finding a home for properties that you knew would be safe, but instead trying things that would push you as a creator and push the people you're working with, and have take some risks and do things that people haven't seen from you before. So for me, after being at DC for 10 years, and I couldn't be happier with my time there, and it was volatility and there was some crazy years, but it landing where it landed with Marie, and I think some of the vision that they have now, and the books that they're doing, I'm really glad for them, and it was a great time to kind of walk away for a bit. But what I was looking for was a home where I could go and try and, after kind of understanding the math or the calculus there for a while, go someplace where you'd be allowed to just, push your own boundaries creatively. So the books that we're doing at Best Jacket, the first kind of wave of 8 that are, me writing, and then having partners and co-creators that really run the whole kind of spectrum of different styles and approaches to comic art are pretty wide in birth. But then the second thing that we're doing that it's been great to talk to Dark Horse about is also helping produce work by up and coming creators. and people that were, former students, other people that are just new talents coming in. So the idea that Dark Horse has been so, I think, supportive and, excited and enthusiastic about bringing in new voices, both and taking risks, both in terms of established creators like me and some of the people I'm working with, and then also welcoming in, new talents, new voices all around, has been a real thrill. So I found it a great creative home, in terms of this period where we're building all this new stuff to get to show you in late 2021 and then 2022, into 2022 spring and fall. So it's been a real thrill. I feel young and new, even though I'm like an old man in comics. I feel, reborn in a lot of ways, to be able to kind of take some risks and fall on my face, and then also promote other people that I think have a lot of great things to say.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think that's definitely something that, comics is absolutely a growing industry in so many ways. But the only way it grows is if we get new voices in the industry and we get new people interested, younger, or people who hadn't really had a voice in comics before. Roye, I know a huge part of YouNeek, of course, is bringing in those voices that people haven't really heard before. That's like a huge foundational principle for what you're doing. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so at YouNeek Studios, for us, it's really about bringing African creators and also African artists, exposing them to a mainstream audience. Even when I was self-publishing, some of the books, like one of the things that I took the most pride in is being able to work exclusively with artists based back home in Lagos, Nigeria. And it's funny, like when I would go to conventions and talk about these books and say like the art was done exclusively back home, like people's jaws would drop and be like, wow, I didn't think that Africa had, these type of things to offer. And for me, my vision and my goal is for, we get into a time where it's not a shock that these type of stories, this type of quality can come from the continent, and people from the continent or in the diaspora that are from the continent like myself. And being able to have the opportunity to now work with Dark Horse to get this book out to a larger audience is just pretty exciting. I think one thing that I'm very happy about with Dark Horse is that, there's this constant reinforcement that comics offer everyone. If you look at the spectrum of the voices that are on here on this panel, like we offer so many different things, so many different perspectives, so many different stories that can be accessed by people, not just here in the States, but just all over the world. And that's really what gets me excited, is the global aspects of comics, and being able to widen the audience to people, that are outside the US, and be able to reach people in different parts of the world with different types of stories. If you look at some of the things we're doing with YouNeek Studios, you have something like Malika Warrior Queen, which is more like a historical fantasy. And then you have EXO, which is like a sci-fi superhero story. And then you have something like Iyanu, Child of Wonder, which is like a YA title that's heavily steeped in like Yoruba mythology. Yoruba is my culture, where I come from in Nigeria. And to be able to do this under the YouNeek banner in partnership with Dark Horse, over a span of 10 books, like it's a monumental thing. So I'm very proud of that, and I can't wait for people to see what we have in store. Like actually, these books are some of them are actually out now. Malika Volume 1 as well as Iyanu Volume 1. Those are out, bookstores and comic shops, online, Amazon, everywhere for you to purchase. And I know people have always wanted to see more diverse storytelling and more diverse voices, even more importantly. And now it's out there. So it's really no excuse for people to say, well, we don't have this type of, books, or we want to see more of this. Dark Horse has actually taken a step to, be very proactive to put these things out and really support these books with adequate marketing and promotion and distribution, So this is something that for me, like, it's a dream partnership, and it's something that I can't wait for people to access.
I all three of you guys do so much work to bring in all those new voices and just to continue to like bring people to comics. Jody, you as well. One of the things that I hear probably the most working at Dark Horse is that people got into comics because they found the Alien Predator line, back when they were kids. And I think now that times have changed a little bit and those have moved to, different places, but it doesn't mean that licensed comics aren't where people get books, because now one of the things I hear the most is that people find, comics through things like Critical Role and Stranger Things. And, how does it feel to be a part of that, growing world of comics and introducing people to the whole medium?
Well, licensed comics are kind of where I got my start, and they've been a pretty consistent thing in my career. And that's something I've just heard constantly at conventions, like people who thought maybe comics weren't for them. They were like a little intimidated because they weren't sure where to start reading a superhero that maybe they thought was cool. But then like this first issue of a book related to a TV show or a movie or something that they loved came out, and that gave them like a clear jumping on point. And because they were already familiar with the characters in the world, it sort of gave them the opportunity to work out how to read comics. Because I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. Like, I assume most of us grew up reading comics, but if you come to it later in life, it can be harder to actually parse out how to follow a story across a page. So I think having licensed books give people the chance, like, A, the impetus to actually go out and buy the thing, but B, it gives them something that they have a familiarity there where they can actually learn to read the comic and to enjoy the medium. So, getting to be a part of that, I'm just always really honored when someone was like, this is the first comic I've ever bought, and what other things should I read? And then you can, point them to like cool creator-owned books and other stuff that you think they might like based on the fact that they like this, TV show or book series or something.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's very true. And especially like I think like Critical Role and Stranger Things are so they're so close to comics, but not exactly comics, so like it's a very good entry point to be like, okay, well, you like this, like here's a way to explore that deeper, and then all of a sudden they're lost in comics forever.
And especially with Critical Role, because so many of the members of the cast are huge comic fans, like it's really cool to have the actual creators of the characters who are obviously so excited to see their creations in comics out there, like promoting the books and talking them up and just pushing for even more cooler stories.
Totally. My next question for you guys is a little bit different. It's less about your individual work and more about you all as creators. So something I hear a lot or see a lot is people talking about like quote unquote like making it in comics. And that means something very different to every single person. Like sometimes that's people like, well, I'm getting paid to do it, or this is my full-time job. But those are like very lofty, big goals. So I was wondering if you had any advice for people who are kind of in that place where they want to quote unquote make it in comics, but like what are some sort of intangible ways that people can feel that or like start being a part of that, quote unquote, like making it world, like not lesser goals, but things you wouldn't necessarily think of being a part of comics.
Well, I mean, do you mean like in terms of making their own comics or in that way? Or
I think a little bit of making their own comics, or even just like, they're not sure where to start to like be even like do they start going to conventions as fans, and like that's how you become like a real comics fan, like so it could be a little bit of both ways.
I mean, like that thing, just in terms of being a fan, if you like one comic book in the world, you're a fan. It doesn't matter like your very first book and you just picked it up and it's 3 pages long, then you're a comic fan, and that's valid, and that's it. So there's no like purity test about being a fan whatsoever, or all of us would be kicked out when we're first starting. So, when I feel like when I was like hired at DC, some of the jobs that you get offered about writing Firestorm and whatever, and the different things, you're like, yes, I love that character. And then you have to look up everything and be like, I mean, all of us have holes all over our geek knowledge, and all that matters is that you enjoy sitting down and reading a single comic, and then you're a comic fan. That's it. Whether you read it digitally or in print or any of that. If you're talking about, so the community itself, I think one of the things that is so great about it is that it's become this big ubiquitous thing where everybody is kind of embracing their inner geek. You can go to conventions, you can find groups online, you can follow people that who inspire you, whether they're artists or writers or just, industry commentators, anything. So the community is welcoming and big and inclusive. And for the most part, just this really robust friendly environment to be a part of. So don't be scared. Like, come on in and celebrate your inner geek, and just, let your geek flag fly, whatever that is, whether it's, DC Marvel stuff, manga, anime, anything. And that's one of the great things about having kids now that are coming up in this time. I feel like I'm so jealous of them, where I'm like, I could never get a Spider-Man toy when I was a kid, except the one with the cloth thing and, the cloth like costume. And for them, they can go to any Target and get like a million geek things. But everybody now, I feel like, is embracing their inner geek, and whatever that is for you, you should feel good about it. And being a part of comics, in terms of being a fan, has no, there's no restriction. It is just door open. If you like a comic, you're a comic fan, and come in, the water's great. In terms of being a creator, or if you're talking about like making your own stuff, I think, Brian was one of the real leaders in terms of opening up, the doorway and saying, here's how you do that, and providing scripts, providing, lessons about how to think of comics as this collaborative medium. And that's the one thing I'd say about it, is that there's so many ways to get your comic out there nowadays versus when we were coming up in different, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Now, like, your resume is the comic that you can make with another creator and post online, or have as your material
Progressive
project that you can show to people. So it's not, don't pitch a Batman story, don't pitch a Superman story, make your own comics. Like, the world needs your voice, and it's not hard to find other creators that are hungry as well. So I know it's a hard job in many ways, but it's also like a wonderful moment in that people are able to connect with each other, I think, more easily than ever.
Yeah, I second all of that. And for me, I think, quote unquote, making it in comics is really just making a comic. And whether that's 5 pages, 20, 100 pages, if you make a comic, like, you're already a success, because you've done something that thousands of people, haven't done before. I think sometimes in the community, people get lost in, how much do you make? Are you doing this for a living? Everybody has different entry points into the industry. Everybody's at different stages. For the most part, for the first 5 or 6 years, I didn't make a dime self-publishing my books. I would go on Kickstarter, raise the money, put all that into making the books. And whatever I made from that, I put it into making the next book. As a matter of fact, I actually, when I first started, I quit my full-time job to go straight into comics. And 3 or 4 years in, I had to go back and get a 9-to-5. And at that point in time, I felt a little bit like a failure, but I had to remind myself that this is my journey, right? It doesn't have to be the same as anybody else's journey. And eventually, I feel like the universe rewards people that can start and finish something. If you can start a book and finish it and put it out there, and keep doing that, eventually you get your break. So whether you want to do licensing, books, or you want to write your own stories, like Scott said, or you want to, get into writing for DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, like, there's so many ways to get into it. The only thing I would say now is there's no excuse not to come up with your own story, because you have social media, you have Kickstarter, you have creators out there who want to, collaborate on stories. If you're a writer, you can find an artist. If you're an artist, you can find a writer. Comics are very hard, don't get me wrong, but it's easier now than ever to make a comic, because it was, 10, 20, 100 times harder. You can ask Scott and Brian, to make a comic, 20, 10, 30 years ago. So right now I just feel like, don't get hung up on, I want to do this for a living, or, whatever. That's your goal. That's fine. You can find and take steps, to get there. But I feel like sometimes people get so hung up on, I'm not making this, or, I want to do this full time. Just make a comic, start there, put it out there. And it's okay to come up with a long-term plan about how you want to get to doing this for a living, but don't be discouraged about how much you make, or, because I feel like a lot of people quit because of that. It's already a hard enough industry, but it's one that rewards people that actually finish stuff and put it out there.
And also, I would add, you don't have to start huge. You don't have to write a 300-page graphic novel or plan out a 20-issue series. Just start with a several-page story, and make sure you have a good grasp of the medium first and foremost, and take the time to actually learn. I mean, I did webcomics for like almost 10 years. And then my first like 3 or 4 years in comics, all I wrote were short stories for anthologies. So it was a few years in before I wrote like a full issue for a publication. So don't be in a huge rush to get there.
Yeah, Jody, I'll take it a step further. I say absolutely do not start with your 300-page. And that spirals back to your excellent note. I found out both Scott and I teach. I don't know if you guys do any teaching, but so we teach. So with that comes a lot of anecdotal information about like where people are in their journey as creators. And you know, I went and spoke at the school that I went to. I went to the Institute of Art when I was coming up, and I went there and I brought up something I saw that was going on in my class. I teach at Portland State, and you finish what you start. The people that finish what they start succeed. The end. Like if you don't finish, you're not going to find out why you did it. You're not going to find out who you are. You're not going to find out what you need to do the next thing. And I brought this up thinking it was just an observation that I'd seen, and I was literally, other teachers rushed the stage going, thank you. I go, finish what you start. They go, it's like an epidemic of people not being able to like finish, and they really mean it. Like they start with such passion, and then something happens. And yeah, sometimes it's an overly ambitious thing that they put in front of themselves, that it's a mountain they can't climb at the moment, all of these things. So I like to break it down to real simple terms. And then people go, how do I break into comics? Make a comic. You're in. That's it. and I've been saying this for years. And what's interesting is some people get real excited when they hear that. They're like, oh, good. Some people just don't believe you. And then I go, all right, I meet your challenge. Go make a comic, see if I'm right. Right? Like, it's the only way you're gonna find out if I'm right or not. And then there's some people who get like almost aggressively angry about that answer. Like they're like, no. And I'm like, see, well, no, what you're upset about is that I have now fully taken away any barrier between you and your, like, I have now given you no permission to hide behind the fear that we all carry fear, right? And fear can fuck with you. And I'm sorry for swearing in the thing.
Fine.
But fear can mess with you on many, many levels and convince you of things and convince you can't do it, or you're not worth doing it, or the place I grew up isn't worth writing about, right? And then you find out all these things are not true. All of them are not true. And so I'm like, make a comic and you're in comics. Now, staying in comics, that's a whole other thing. but it is one of the great joys of teaching is that you're sometimes there for someone's first real moment of, oh, this is who I am. Oh, this is who I want to be, you know, and that's really, really exciting. I mean, and it selfishly can like jolt you right back to like yourself and like what you like, remind you what you want to be and why you're doing it. And it's quite a magical back and forth to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't realize you taught at Portland State.
Yeah, almost 13 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Me and David Walker actually co-teach together, which is a great experience because it allows more of a conversation in class. Like the students really enjoy it, and less me droning on about Will Eisner and more aggressively talking about Will Eisner like friends. So that's a different kind of.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Portland State has a wonderful comic studies program. That is
it's brilliant, and it's one of the many around the country that none of them existed years ago, and now they all, even when we started at Portland State, it was no one else is doing this, let's do it. And for me it was great because I get to teach the class that I wanted to take in college. Like I literally build the class that here's all the things I wish someone would have told me like right then. And start from there. But it's amazing that we live in a world where there are comic book college classes and they're accredited and you can head towards the goal. That none of that existed when I came up. So much like you and your kids don't have to go searching for anything, it's nice that this stuff is right here. No, we know what's great about it is that instead of worrying about where I'm going to get this information from, which is what I used to do, like looking through the back of old comic magazines and just looking for any nugget of like craft information. Here's all the information, dig in, dive in, and then get to work. Like instead of, doing all that archaeology, and you can just figure out who you are. And that's a better use of time.
And, even if you can't, if you're someone like me who, I already got my MFA and they didn't have comics classes back then, but there's so much information you can find online. There's so many creators who are incredibly generous with sharing scripts and information and stories. A lot of us, because we didn't have the opportunity to study it formally, most of us are self-taught. And there's great books out there. There's, Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics is sort of the go-to recommendation. I learned it was writing comics the DC Comics way, I think, was sort of my first look. But
it's one of Matt's favorites too, actually.
There's just so many resources out there. So don't feel like the fact that you don't necessarily have a degree in it means you can't do it. Again, there's no.
Yeah.
I have a degree in computer science and I write comic books, so go figure.
Also, I mean, so much of it is like you and the collaboration with your artist. I mean, your co-creator. I mean, for like my first comic, I would be like, this page is 20 panels. You know what I mean? And like all of those mistakes that you make going in thinking of it as a writing craft. Right. All of it is like understanding that it's, you and somebody else making something together, multiple people, but especially you and your co-creator in that way. And everybody's going to mess up. Like the whole fun of it is bringing something to life with a team of people that you care about and that, are going to, like Brian said earlier, birthing this thing together with you. So I came from prose. So that was where I like Jody, I got my MFA in fiction, but I always wanted to be a comic book writer. But what I didn't understand until I started doing it was how deeply collaborative it is. It's not writing a script and handing it to an artist and saying, draw this or that kind of thing. It's building something from the ground up together from every stage, where you present a concept and they present designs and you go back and forth and say, that's better than what I thought, let me change my idea. And all of it is organic. And that's the fun of it, is that you're bringing something to life as a team. And, so in that way, like you should also feel like that it's demystified for you as some lofty thing where you have to write a script a certain way and have it in a, in this format and that, because I get all these questions all the time about like, what do you use Word or this, or, what do you, it really is, it's much more tactile than that, where you're like getting in there and talking to the person that you're building it with, saying, how do we make something special to both of us? And it's, you make mistakes along the way, and it's a fun process that way. It's very like, get in there, get your hands dirty and mess up together and then make something you both love, in that way, or all of you love. So I don't know. It shouldn't be as an art form. It's like it should be less intimidating than like prose or that stuff, in the way that, you're making something with people that you enjoy, and you enjoy the kind of back and forth with in that regard, and that make you better than you could be alone, the way Brian said earlier too, and that's fun. It's fun to learn more about yourself and about the world through the lens and the prism of other people, and make something that like you couldn't do by yourself at all.
Exactly. Well, you know what? Let me watch me expertly slide in a little Dark Horse history into this Dark Horse panel, because literally when I so distinctly remember I was obsessed with Dark Horse's Legends line when it was like Miller and Darrow and Frank Miller had introduced us to GF Darrow, right? And with Hardboiled.
Hardboiled, dude. I still have all my original issues of that.
Yeah, and if you don't have it, go get it. And but this was, if you were a diehard Frank Miller fan like we were, and here he was introducing this new voice, right? It was someone we hadn't seen before, and it was but it looked like, how could I've never seen this person before? Oh my God, right? And in the promotion of the Hardboiled and in the discussion of it since, it was all about Frank kind of like redefining himself as a writer to service this artist. Like, how do I craft the story to inspire this great work and then get the hell out of the way of this great work, right? And he talked about it at great length, because it was like he'd done it with Bill Sienkiewicz, and now he was doing it with Geoff Darrow, and he would talk about it endlessly because he was a writer artist who now was fully working towards an artistic goal he could not hit himself, right? And so all of that was like all of the most complicated ideas of collaboration were all invested in those two books, and I think about them all the time when I'm creating new stuff. And now here I'm at Dark Horse, actually applying that philosophy to a Dark Horse title is pretty exciting. But yeah, that's where I learned a lot of this stuff for the first time, like that next level collaboration of you using everything you have to try to make the other people look as good as they can.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing.
That's great. Well, that kind of brings me to one of my next questions, which was just kind of a very simple, fun one. But what's exciting to you about comics in this day and age, like right now? And then Scott, I'll start with you because I know you have to get out of here on us a little bit.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think what's exciting to me is that it's such uncharted territory. I mean, I love that Dark Horse is embracing a lot of the kind of wide open frontier aspects of it, and again, welcoming in new voices and taking risks and all of that. But I think it's volatile, it's changing. There's a lot of excitement around independent creator-owned comics in all kinds of ways, where I think my kids, for example, are primed because of the way they read, and the way they consume entertainment, both from the pandemic and before that, curating their own libraries of stuff that they find themselves, of looking for series and things they can call their own they love the big tentpole Marvel and DC stuff. I mean, they've been raised on 15 years of amazing Marvel movies and, DC movies and stuff, and they love it. I mean, they love all those superheroes, but they're also eager to find their own things. Both my 14-year-old, my 10-year-old, like there's an excitement around, okay, let's now go and find series that are ours, the way we found, Death Note and Attack on Titan and all that stuff that they love too. So I feel like there's an infusion of energy in creator-owned and independent comics that Dark Horse seems to thrive on. So for me, like right now, it's a great moment. I mean, I know it's scary, and there's a kind of like worry about like, are the old systems changing, and DC and Marvel, are they, are there these big shifts? And there are, but they're going to be fine. And I think, these superheroes have 80, 90 years of legacy behind them, and people will always love them. But I think there's a great kind of energy behind, young readers coming in and wanting stuff that's theirs. And there's a whole kind of strange support ecosystem behind the way that there's this demand for new stuff in terms of streaming and all of that too. So suddenly you're in a moment when there's like practical demand from demand for IP, from, all these different platforms, from Amazon and Netflix and whatever it is. And it allows creators to take some risks and do different things. And I think Dark Horse has been great about embracing that spirit and saying, let's try new things, bring in new voices, do new series, all of that stuff, at a moment when I think, doing that is meeting the moment. So I don't know, as scary as it is, I think it's a great moment, and I'm excited for it.
I couldn't agree more. I actually, we've been watching literally since the first Shrek movie, we've been watching pop culture eat its own face for a long time, like up to the last Wreck-It Ralph. There's just everything is being smushed into each other, like Disney princesses and Star Wars and D&D, and it's all getting put together in awesome ways, and that's fun. But all of it's getting eaten up in like many different ways. So this wave of this need for new is because everything got eaten, right? So it's almost up to us to create as much new stuff as possible. The people are going to need it. My son's relationship to Star Wars is completely different than mine, because he saw Star Wars first from Legos. Like it's a complete, it's not a bad thing. It's just a completely different way that he saw it. And so we have to kind of create our own new Star Wars all the time. And also, and to act to your original question, that the one thing that just delighted me was over the this time where everyone's locked up in their house, they kind of rediscovered their stories or their relationship to their stories. Like, oh, it's me and so my some of my privilege has been like some of my runs are so long that like someone like will tweet me, hey, I just read 18 years of your Spider-Man, or like, and that's like I never in a million years, even while I was doing it, never thought that would be a thing someone would write me. Right. And have and we're having a real emotional moment together. Like they're stepping out of themselves to like find me and share that with me. And it happened constantly. I'm sure it happened with you guys too. Just this like, I'm alone in my room with your work and I want to share that moment with you, is a very beautiful, intimate moment that other generations of authors did not get to experience. Like we get to experience that. Yeah, we get some of the shit too, but the reality is we get a lot of genuine connection, and that's the whole point of making stories, is that you're trying to connect to people. So it's kind of been brilliant this last couple of years of just really feeling that.
And I think that's like one of the good things that came out of everyone being in lockdown, because I remember last year when like all the comic shops were closing for an indeterminate amount of time and books were going on hold, and there was a lot of just initial worry, like how is the industry going to pull out of this? So many people operate on narrow margins, but the thing is, like when times get hard, that's when people need stories the most. They need to have that outlet and the art and the hope. So knowing that all of us were contributing in some way to making a really hard year a little bit easier for people, that means a lot. And, in terms of what you were talking about, Scott, with just the diversity we're seeing out there, like I think especially the fact that we're seeing so many really diverse books for younger readers. Like I'm really excited to see what the kids who are reading the books now like grow up and what they create, because they're just having such a more inclusive experience than a lot of us did. So I think there's just going to be some really beautiful stuff coming from like the generation growing up with, as like so many graphic novels coming out with different perspectives.
Yeah. I've tweeted about, I can't wait. I walked into Barnes & Noble. I saw the YA section, of which all a lot of us are part of, right? To my surprise, like I'm surprised that I find, like I was a crime writer and now I'm like, I have YA and so I'm looking at this wall of 80% not Marvel and DC, just like from all walks of life, all different publishers. And I'm like, wow, what will comics look like in 10 years if this is what kids are reading? If this is what the comic shelf looks like today, it couldn't look more different than the one I was buying from. That's amazing. I'm so excited to see where comics go.
Yeah.
Like these kids are going to read this and do something 10 times where we are now. Can't wait.
Yeah, I think for me, I just have to second everything that everybody has said. But for me, I think one thing I'll say is that change is uncomfortable. Can you hear me now?
We want to see the baby.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. Forgive me.
It's totally fine.
Change sometimes is uncomfortable, but I think positive change in the long run is better for everybody involved. I like the fact that comics are now more inclusive and less gatekeeping. I think that's better for everybody. And to me, I always say comics are for everybody. It doesn't matter what part of the world you are. It's a medium that can literally suck anybody from all parts of life and the world in. So my hope is that we continue to go in this trend of things, because I still feel like there's a lot more that we can do. Because I think the growth of comics, because now you have things like streaming, gaming that are taking so many people's attention. The only way I feel like, at least in my opinion, comics can continue to grow is becoming more global, becoming more inclusive to different cultures, different people from all walks of life, reading different stories and appreciating people's different cultures. I think as human beings, that's one of the reasons why we love to travel, is because we love to experience something different. And I think comics gives you one of the easiest ways to just dive into a world that you've never seen before, and follow that journey, whether it's just a one shot or it's a graphic novel series of 10 volumes. Not many mediums can do what comics does. So I think the more things like this that we do, the more inclusive we get, the bigger the industry is, the more creators that we get to come in. And I feel like that's really the next frontier for comics, is just making it a whole global play where people from different parts of the world bring different stories.
And Roye, I think also you're probably already feeling it, but you've created a situation where there are going to be kids that read the books that you're making and go, oh, I can do this.
Exactly.
Oh, I can do this. And that's happened to all of us. Like I was literally living in Cleveland, and I found out who else in Cleveland made comics. So I can make a comic.
Exactly.
And that's an enormous thing.
It is. And again, it's one of the reasons why I'm very thankful for the opportunity with Dark Horse, because it's not only about the characters in the books, it's the people creating these characters. I think it's even more important for people to see someone that looks like them creating comics, because I didn't get that. It took me a longer road and more fear and more rejection to finally push myself through. But to be able to have somebody that looks like you doing what you want to do, what you aspire to do, is a huge thing. And I'm just happy that I have a little bit of a role to play in that for kids of the next generation.
That's exciting.
All right. Well, it sounds like Scott's got to jump, so we'll let you go, but thanks for joining us. And we are pretty much going to be closing out here as well. So I'm going to ask you guys all where folks can find you online, and maybe your latest project.
I guess I'll just go first. Well, you can find all the information about YouNeek Studios at YouNeekStudios.com. It's spelled YOUNEEK Studios.com. But the Dark Horse versions of Malika Warrior Queen Volume 1 and Iyanu Child of Wonder Volume 1, they're available in stores, nationwide, online as well. So please support. These are really great stories that obviously inspired by African history, culture, and mythology, but they're created for everybody. Like I said, one of the things I'm very proud of is being able to bring these type of stories to the mainstream for a broad audience to be able to experience a different culture as it pertains to fantasy and superhero stories. So please check it out in stores now and online.
You can find me on Twitter at Jody_Houser and on Instagram at MindEclipse. I think the next thing I have coming out, aside from Vox Machina Origins, which is ongoing, is the Caleb Widogast graphic novel that comes out in December. It was a little bit delayed, but that's if you like sad wizards, that's the book for you.
I love
that. All right. And damn, my sad wizard pitch, I got to put in the we're again, just like I said earlier, we're just starting our new partnership with Dark Horse Comics. So the first book will be Joy Operations #1 by myself and Stephen Byrne. It's a big new sci-fi world trying to create something new from scratch, and I'm excited to show it to everybody. That will be coming out in November. You can see more about it in my newsletter and everything else at jinxworld.com, or head over to Twitter or Instagram, and I'm there fielding questions. So, and then after that, we have Pearl and some the other books we were doing at DC are coming to Dark Horse and continuing. And I just want to thank everyone for supporting them. It's a really amazing experience to create something from scratch and have it out in the world, and for it to sustain itself on any level. It's a beautiful thing. And I spend most of my day not tweeting thank you constantly, almost like I feel it like dozens of times a day, like, oh, what a nice thing I just got to do. Thank you, everybody. So come check us out online and see what you do. Also, first issue of Pearl is free at darkhorse.com, so you can go check it out. It's by Michael Gaydos, who I created Jessica Jones with. It's a big Yakuza crime romantic comedy, and I think it's the best work he's ever done, and I'm excited to be part of it.
Awesome. All right. And thank you all for watching us today. Of course, you can find Dark Horse pretty much everywhere, Dark Horse Comics. You can look us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the internet. You'll find us. And I hope you all enjoy your Comic-Con either at home or in person or wherever you happen to be. Bye.